Okay. We're back.
Okay, keep in mind we just said the prayer, so everybody stay in the spirit for the scripture reading, which is next. This is 1 John chapter 4, verse 2. It says, "This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God." And so we have a few announcements. So our January 14th meeting, 2022, is next year already. Brian Young will be speaking on scientific evidences for a young Earth, probably. I still need to negotiate the actual talk subject. February 11th, 2022, Bill Jack will be speaking probably on some topic related to authority. On April 8th, 2022, we are going to have a March meeting, by the way, but I don't know quite who the speaker is going to be yet. But on April 8th, the April meeting will be Dr. Rob Carter. And on April 22nd to 23rd, which is not one of our regular meetings, ICR is going to be coming into town, and Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship, jointly with Denver Society of Creation, will be sponsoring that conference with ICR, entitled, the overall title for it is Uncovering the Truth About Creation. And we will have Dr. Randy Gulibeluzza, Dr. Tim Clary, and Dr. Brian Thomas as speakers at that conference. We're looking at the possibility of, this isn't cast in stone yet. Remember that the fact that God created the earth and the heavens and the earth in 6 days is cast in stone. So that's where that saying comes from. But this is not cast in stone. But on the weekend of May 6th and 7th, we might be having a youth conference with Carl Kirby. So kind of put that in your back pocket as a possibility, and we're gonna be working on that over the next month. So with that should complete the announcements for now. And last month, Simon Shamlin gave a nice talk, and unfortunately, our video wasn't working. We don't have video of him, and we don't have audio or anything. So I asked him to give the talk again. This time, hopefully, we can capture it on video. So Simon, would you like to come up and make your presentation?
Thank you. Are we live? Is everything good? Hi, I am Simon Chamblin, a listener among the brightest audience in the country. The evolutionist worldview is stupid. Evolutionists say that 4.5 billion years ago, the universe was created from absolutely nothing. And a giant explosion formed the universe, and then the earth formed. Later on, a Mars-sized object collided with the earth and the moon was formed. And then somehow we got oceans, and then bacteria, and the bacteria evolved into fish, then into monkey-like creatures, and then they evolved into humans. They think with water, oxygen, carbon, and a Goldilocks planet, we can have life. But God made this planet special just for life, which, by the way, if we just waited to get 2 good mutations in a line to evolve from random chances, it would take so long, it would never actually happen because the number of years would be too colossal and the number of mistakes would be overwhelming. Don't ask me how we even have an Earth after 4.5 billion years, but this is what they think happened. They call us religious, and if you search Google, it says that Christianity is a religion, atheism is a belief, but evolutionism is science. Oh, and Galileo Galilei, he was Catholic, believed in God, but on the other hand, he was a great believer in the role of science and the fascinating beauty of God's creation. Who invented the telescope, discovered Jupiter's 4 largest moons and Saturn's rings, was for his heresy in claiming that Earth orbits the sun. Galileo was sentenced to life imprisonment by the Roman Catholic Church in 1633. He was not tortured or executed. He served his sentence under house arrest and died at home in 1642 after an illness. I actually like the old Earth model on how the Earth was formed from a fantasy perspective because it looks like a science fiction movie like Star Wars or something. But to say that this is actually how we got here is ridiculous. The evolutionist worldview and teaching that we are all animals in school and maybe aliens brought us here leads to tons of horrible things like homosexuality, people thinking the Earth is overpopulated, etc., which all these problems can be broken down in the first 2 pages of the Bible. Genesis 1:1 says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On day one, God made light. Day 2, God made the sky and the waters on the earth. Day 3, God separated the waters on the earth and made dry land and plants. Day 4, God made the universe, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Day 5, God made flying creatures and sea creatures, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Day 6, God made land creatures, saying to them, be fruitful and multiply." Genesis 1:26-31 says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness to rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, and over all the earth itself and every creature that crawls upon it." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and every creature that crawls upon it. It was that crawls upon the earth. Then God said, behold, I have given you every seed-bearing plant on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit contains seed, there will be yours for food. And God looked upon all that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the 6th day. Then Genesis 2:1-2 says, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. And by the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on that day, he rested from all of his work. So we are not equal to animals. In fact, we have dominion over all the animals and all the earth. And the earth will never be overpopulated. God said to fill the earth, be fruitful and multiply. And I'm pretty sure if he needed to, God would have made the earth bigger. Evolutionists think that information can arise from nothing given enough time, and we can evolve from apes. But actually, information can't arise from nothing. And over time, we lose information, not gain it. It's actually completely backward. We lose information, get more mutations, and eventually go into dust. So in conclusion, God created the whole universe in 144 hours, and in the remaining 24 hours, he rested. We did not evolve from animals. We have dominion over all animals. We are not overpopulated. We actually have plenty of room on this earth for us. Thank you.
Okay, the next thing that we have is, since we're coming up on Christmas here, this is the Christmas season. So We have a short presentation. And just a second, Kate. I'll do the credits now. Sorry. This presentation was made very recently, and we didn't have time to attach the credits to the end. So I'm going to read the credits at the beginning so that we can have that on record. So we've got stock footage from PEXELS. Okay. O Come Emmanuel by Eddie Hermosa. O Holy Night by, this is like a foreign language here. El Orchestra Cinematique. O Holy Night by twin composers. Mary and Joseph Travel to Bethlehem by Church of the Latter-day Saints. The Shepherd the Shepherd Christmas Special of the Chosen. So with that, we can start over.
Oh, that's not there. Something.
You have to remind me what I'm looking for.
But thou, Bethlehem, Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting.
And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, every one into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was, that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said one to another, Let us now go even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord hath made known unto us. And they came with haste, and found Mary and Joseph, and the babe lying in a manger. And when they had seen it, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all they that heard it wondered at those things which were told them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things, and pondered them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it was told unto them.
All right, shall we do that over again with the lights off for the whole thing? Okay, so now we have our feature presentation tonight. Our speaker, Kate Warren. Kate taught in Christian schools for 14 years. In 1992, she went into a music career and ministry with the circuit riders singing cowboy Western music and Christian music near Yellowstone National Park and in churches around the West. Since her teens, Kate has had a keen interest in biblical creation. Well, in Wyoming, Kate created a Creation VBS program that has been used in several churches. After marrying Joe in 2009, her new husband took her to the Creation Museum for their honeymoon. Living near the geological features of Western Wyoming served to increase Kate's desire to educate Christians in a biblical worldview. While living in England for 6 years, Kate was able to teach a class on Genesis 1 through 11 for the Protestant women of the chapel at Menwith Hill Royal Air Force Base, where Joe worked. Women from a wide range of Protestant backgrounds expressed that they had never been taught Genesis before and realized that they had been misled all their lives with evolution. Now, back in Colorado, God has connected Kate with the International Association for Creation in establishing creation tours in natural history museums. Kate is an independent guide leading tours at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Kate?
Thank you. Merry Christmas. That was a beautiful presentation. And this morning we got snow finally. Had to wake up and it actually looked a little bit like Christmas. And I was going, I don't like driving in the snow and I don't know where I'm going tonight, but God was good, melted it off by the time it was time to come over here. And Simon, thank you. Where's Simon? Where'd he go? There you are. You did some of my work for me. Thanks. It's interesting going into secular places. Doesn't even have to be a museum. Like you mentioned, I lived in Cody, Wyoming for a number of years. And we drive up there through the Wind River Canyon. Anybody ever go up through there? That's just this awesome canyon. And every quarter mile or so, it seems that there's a sign that tells you which geological period you're driving through. And I've often wished I knew more about geology. I'm not a scientist, by the way. I taught school. I taught some science to 5th and 6th graders, and that's about it. But I've always been very interested in creation. When I was 15 years old, my dad came home from a year in Turkey with a book called Man's Origin, Man's Destiny by A.E. Wilder Smith. And I read that, and that clicked with me because it gave me a foundation biblically, but that evolution, you don't have to swallow that stuff. And it was very good. It gave me some really good solid grounding. I've been interested ever since. So what I'm doing is I've done 3 tours so far at the museum, but I think a lot of times Christians are a little afraid to go into those because you know you're going to be just inundated with evolution, and you are. I probably would imagine everybody who's here could go into the Denver Museum of Nature and Science and you would be just fine. How many have gone to that museum? Yeah, there you go. And yet you're here. You're not going, oh, never again. I don't believe that the Bible is true. They had such good displays. When I was in England, the Protestant women of the chapel would change their officers every year because it was a military installation. And they talked me into being president one year. The gal that was going out from the year before she was a school teacher, public school. And before I got into my year when I was going to actually do some live on the ground teaching, not just doing video Bible studies for the ladies. And so we had a summer every other week or so, we would do something. And I showed the Louis Giglio film about, I can't even think of the name of it now, the planets, How Great Is Our God, maybe that's the name of it. That it really didn't get into creation that much, but she pops up and she says, why do we have to believe all of this the way the Bible says? And I was quite stunned because she had been teaching Bible studies for this group. But she said at one point she really believed the 6-day creation, but then she went to the Smithsonian Institution and she felt like a fool. Those multi-million-dollar exhibits turned her away. And I thought that was the saddest thing ever. So when the International Association for Creation started up with the tour guides, right before COVID hit, they're really getting into doing this. And Stephen Polycastro got in touch with me and said, would you be interested in being a guide? And I said, yeah, that sounds like it'd be kind of fun. And then things kind of, we got locked down, couldn't go anywhere. And then after it all opened up to where you could go to the museum, I went and took some notes and we got started going on this. But one of the things I found is, here's a quote, Dr. Minton, evolution is a jealous God that will have no other gods before it. I love that quote, because when you talk to an evolutionist, I'm sure you know, they don't like their religion attacked. And they defend what they believe as though they were defending a deity. I think they are. But we don't need to avoid secular museums. And so the idea here is to have church groups or family groups, homeschool groups that would say, hey, can you take our group through the museum and give us a good biblical account of what's going on and what we see? So when you walk in, we're going to do a quick virtual tour through the museum. And they gave me an hour. It takes a whole lot longer to go through the Denver Museum in an hour, but I'll kind of skip through. You walk in and here's this lovely guy up there, this big old T-Rex. You get your, why am I pointing to this? You can't see them. I need one of those pointers. He's about ready to step on the people in line getting their tickets. But God made this animal. It doesn't really belong to evolution, it belongs to God. Just a quick little thing, you've probably been to the 7 C's of history, Answers in Genesis, I think has done a really good job of putting these out there to kind of help us get a good idea of the history of the world based on the Bible. So you can pretty much cover, well, at least through confusion in the museum. It's a really good framework for being able to look at the different displays. Oops, trying to get my, did you ever lose a cursor? I did. I don't know where he is. Let me. Okay, I'll try to remember what my notes say. Okay, so we go to the gem and minerals, and you get to see a lot of cool stuff in there. The catastrophe, the flood, this is really good. You go in there and you can just show different kinds of gems, minerals. This is kind of cool. It's ripples in the sandstone. And I had heard that the little ripples, and you guys probably know this, if you measure the angle of the ripples, if they form by wind, it's a different angle than if they form underwater. Of course not. I touched it. Oh, that. Okay, I thought you were handing me one that would advance my.
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, nice. Well, okay, now that I've got the toy, here you go. Over millions of years. They're everywhere, the millions of years. You just can't escape it. So it's fun going through there, seeing all the gems and everything. And I kind of take people through there pretty quick. It's fun looking at the stuff and pointing out some of the things, but we're going to speed right through. Then it's always fun to go up into the wildlife exhibits. You can get into creation on this with the animal kinds. God created the animals to reproduce after their own kinds. And I like to say, all right, here you go, take this piece of paper, and it's a scavenger hunt, and look for how many bears you find in the bear kind. You get polar bears, and you get black bears, and you get grizzly bears. But especially for kids, when kids can do that, and they can go through and just point all the different ones that they see in there. You see different landforms also. It looks different in our region of the world than, say, Africa. So do the animals look different. And yet, the North American animals, you have antelope kind, and in Africa, you also have antelope kind, cat kind. And this was quite good. Sometimes the museum does our work for us. Charles Darwin's question. Maybe you can read it better that way. Why do species vary? He says, the beaks and behaviors of Galapagos Island finches are so different from each other that Darwin first thought they were entirely different types of birds. After years of study, Darwin and British ornithologist John Gould found that the Galapagos finches were related to each other through a common ancestor. Each species then evolved differently, isolated on its individual island. Modern genetic studies suggest more new species of finches as well as hybrids. And then look at some of these words. They're still finches. We'd expect that. Darwin first thought they were entirely different types of birds, but they're still finches. And he found that they were related. Then they evolved differently. Well, they changed because they were in isolated communities. So it's kind of fun to take a look at what they say and go, it just says what the Bible says. They just look at it differently. And as we found out, the worldview that Simon told us about earlier, when you see it through your worldview, you interpret things the way your worldview says. I like to give kids toy binoculars with colored cellophane on the ends and say, what you learn about things colors the way you see it. And that kind of makes some points with them. You go 600 miles from the mainland to the Galapagos Islands, and you're going 1.5 to 3 million years. And you just point out, no, they're going to isolated communities where these creatures got stuck on their island and they had to adapt their beaks according to the kind of food they had. The title of that exhibit, I didn't get it all on there, but it's Science is About Asking Questions, unless you're asking an evolutionist to explain themselves. And then that doesn't work so well. Okay, so we'll move on from there to the Native American exhibit. Shows a lot of the different Native American tribes. And the fun thing with that, when you first walk in, I didn't get a picture of this, but there's a great big map on the wall in there. And it shows different places that some of the tribes had come from, and you can trace some of them. If you imagine the map is up here, and you've got Siberia, then you've got Alaska, and then coming on down, it's just obvious that, and they've done genetic testing too, that a lot of the tribes, especially here in the western part of the United States, are descended from people in Asia. My husband and I went to Cancun this spring, and we got to go to Chichen Itza. Our guide said, we're all Mayans down here. And they tested us and found out that we all come from Asia. So you look at Genesis chapter 11, Tower of Babel, and everybody getting scattered around, and there they are. Different cultures, they've developed different languages, different ways they lived according to where they are. Some of them make teepees because they're more nomadic, and that's what they had to build with. Other have, like the Navajos, that build hogans. They just, people, groups together. Answers races, takes care of all of it. Answers the idea of animals migrating as well. Space Odyssey is fun. If you've been in there, you'll notice that it's not so much looking at what's out in the heavens, but it's looking at how mankind has figured out ways to explore the heavens. And that really shows the creativity that we have, because we're made in the image of God. You don't find animals doing stuff like this. They do what they do because that's the way God made them to do it. But God gave us curiosity because He's intelligent. He made us intelligent. And we have used our God-given abilities to reach out and explore what's out there. I find it fascinating to think how much is out there that we can't even see. And God made it for His glory and for us to wonder at. So I wonder, is there going to be a time that we'll someday be able to go, in the new heavens and new earth, get out and explore? I don't know. It's an interesting thought. When you first go in, there's a picture. It looks like an old parchment, an old book, and Chichen Itza is on there. Our guide took this picture of us when we were down there. I used to think this is where they would, you get up there and they would bring the sacrifices up, kill them, dump them down the steps. No, that wasn't that building. That would have been over there someplace. This is a calendar. I didn't know that was a calendar. At the beginning, the first of the year, on the very first step, there would be a stone placed. And the fellow that was in charge of that stone, the next day, he would move it. Every day he would move it up. When he got to the top, that was the end of the first season. Then he would come down the next and so on. And he's got all 4 seasons, an entire year on there. And that way they knew how to look at the stars, to follow all that, to know when to plant, to know when the rains were coming. And it goes right back to Genesis, when God made the heavens, the stars, the sun and the moon for signs and for seasons, so people knew how to organize their lives. Now, I didn't see this guy there. I was hunting on the internet for some images, and I found a picture of this. I think this must have been a previous exhibit of mythical creatures. And there it is, it's a dragon, but I kind of wonder how close they had it to that exhibit. I don't know, but who knows. All right, now we're going to go to prehistoric journey. This is the one that really deals with the dinosaurs. This is where the little kids want to go. They all want to go see the dinosaurs. And this is the entrance to it. And I like to point out to my groups the verse, 1 Peter 3:15, but in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. The ministry Genesis Apologetics have made available to a number of us tour guides around the country whisper sets. I have a microphone and a transmitter, and I have Bluetooth devices that people can put on their ears. And that way I can talk to them without having to speak loudly and disturb other people who are in the museum. And yeah, I know that maybe, well, if other people hear you, you might be able to get the message out, but that's kind of intrusive. And believe me, when you're talking to a group and people hear that something's going on, I've had people kind of hang around the perimeter and listen. Oh, I didn't know about that. What are they doing? And kind of following along. So it's rather interesting. We had one of the groups, I think it was the first time we went, and I was handing out the whisper sets right outside of this exhibit and getting everybody settled into their phones as well, because I have Google Slides that people can access on their phones as we go. And I'll show you what we have with those in a minute. And I was talking to them, and there were two docents that were standing over just outside the perimeter. And the one gentleman was one that I talked to one day when I was in taking notes. You don't very often see people going into a museum with a notepad and a pen, writing things down. So he was curious and was asking me what I was taking notes for. And I told him what I was going to be doing. So that got into a bit of a conversation. I think he was, when we showed up, I think he was a little maybe concerned that we were going to be kind of obnoxious. And this says, do things with gentleness and respect. And I'm really grateful to have the whisper sets, because we can do that. We can do what we do. I can talk, people talk back to me, but we don't have to do it loudly. So we're like, not like I'm teaching in a classroom and need to project my voice. So once we get the whisper sets, here's this quote again. I put that up there because that's one of the things that I gave everybody a link, and they get their phones out and they get to the link, and I have PowerPoint slides that they get on their phone. And okay, pretend that's a phone. All right, I'm sorry. These are my notes. I'll pretend it's a phone. I didn't bring my number. And so I can just tell them, go to slide number 2 or whatever. And then that way I have things that I can support visually what I'm telling them. And I will show you some of those as we go through. This is one of them. Here's another one. I point out to them the 2 kinds of scientific research, operational science and historical science. And I say, operational science gives us things like medicines, spacecraft, and computers and cell phones and all these things that we have. That's the scientific method. You observe, you test, and then you keep testing and you try to eliminate all the stuff that doesn't work right. Historical science is trying to look at what you think about the past and make conclusions from that. Some examples would be paleontology. Does a fossil, when you dig up a fossil, are you digging up the past? No, you're digging up a fossil that exists today in the present as it sits in front of you in the ground. So you're not digging up the past. You have to make up some kind of an idea about it based on whatever evidence you can find, but a lot of it is speculation. Forensic criminal investigation, you can't go back and watch somebody commit a crime. It's been done, unless you've got a camera or eyewitnesses, which is really cool about the Bible, because we do have an eyewitness, right? God created, he's the one who was there, he was the eyewitness, and he wrote down what he did so that we can read it and learn. And he's trustworthy, he's holy, he doesn't lie. So observation by us is impossible. Then I have them think about these things. I kind of came up with this little acronym, WASP. I say, as we go through the museum, keep your eyes open for these. Where do you see the museum putting out their worldview of evolution? What assumptions have they made on some of the things that they're telling us as we look at the different signs as we go through there? And what's their starting point? Well, pretty much we know their starting point is going to be evolution. And sometimes we get into a conversation with people who don't want to believe. They're evolutionists. They don't want to believe us. I said, okay, you give me evidence, but you leave your Bible behind. Let's have some neutral ground. You can't have neutral ground. We stand on the Bible. The last group I took through was just my niece and her husband. And he claimed to be a Christian, but he kept saying, yeah, but what if? I said, you know, it's interesting what you're saying, but I stand on the Bible. If it doesn't fit with the Bible, then I have to reject it. And so I want to make sure that my folks that come through with me know that you've got to stand solid on God's word. The Bible is not a science book. But when science connects with the Bible is always right. Science just has to catch up to it. So when we step in, at the very beginning, okay, I need to look for my cursor on the screen. There we go. There are several panels. Step over the side here. There are several panels that it's a long hallway, about as long as this, and the panels are there. And this is supposed to be the way the earth was formed. And you can see the clock running up there. It's just running up all the time, just spinning away. And I have my guests put the days of creation on their phones so that they've got that right there. They've got the biblical account, and they can see that how God created wasn't anything like what the speculation is that the evolutionists have. It's very sad to see people bring little kids in, stick them in front of this thing, and say, this is how our world was made. And the kids are just thinking, I just want to go see a dinosaur. I don't care about this. I had one day, a gal comes in and it looked like they were about second graders maybe. It looked like she might have been a mom with a class. And you know how you would have the parents take a smaller group through a museum so that they're all a bunch of them together. And as we got to the end, see how life evolved on the earth, there was a spot where you could see the landform breaking up. And she was saying, well, this asteroid hit, and she was struggling with that. And I kind of stepped over and said, or maybe this happened not so long ago in a worldwide flood. And she goes, she knew, but I think because she was with a public school group, she couldn't say anything. And that made me very sad. It would, we're rolling our way through that again. But I then have my people move to the next slide, and they see the over here in the gray, the splitting up. God said he created the sea in an area, and it seems to indicate one land mass. And that fits. Everybody seems to agree that that's the way it works. This is the layout of the museum. You walk in down here, and you wind your way through there. You go up steps, you come up here, then you come down, and you wind your way through, and you come out this way. So it's a pretty good exhibit. There's a lot of stuff in there. This is the explosion of life. So what I do is I have, it's like all of these, oh, we actually get some sound on this one. You just hear people chattering in the background. But it's all the little so-called simple organisms that they find in the lower layers or the so-called older rock layers. After all, that's what existed when those layers were made. It's just those animals, because they look at that, and that's interpreted through their worldview what they think. So I have everybody get this slide on their phones. And if there's a very good way to explain this. In the lower layers, that was the first layers that were laid down during the flood. And I said the flood wasn't just 40 days and 40 nights. They lasted about a year. It was violent. There were the fountains of the deep. There were just washes of sediment and mud flows and animals trying to escape. And these animals were not able to escape. They didn't have the bodies to be able to do it, and they weren't all that smart to figure out how to get out of that. So those are the ones that were stuck. As you go up, you find that the ones that succumb as you progress through the year, this is not millions of years. This is about a year where the layers were made. And it just, as you go up, you just see the creatures getting more and more able to get away from that until finally, what happened was what God said would happen. Everything would die, except for what was on the ark. This is where I was standing when I was taking the notes, and the docent approached me. That was the Miller-Urey exhibit. Abiogenesis is a theory that under proper conditions, life can arise spontaneously from non-living molecules. DNA is a language and code that is the blueprint for every living thing. A language and a code must come from a mind. Information arises from information. We heard that already tonight. So this basically is, they didn't get what they thought they were going to get. They were hoping to get some proteins, and I cannot get to my notes for anything over here. Okay. The odds of getting one small protein is the same as flipping a coin and getting 100 heads in a row. How many flips do you think you would have to go through to get heads 100 times in a row? That's considered statistically impossible. So to get life from non-life, to get those building blocks of life they were trying to do at that exhibit was statistically impossible. And what they did get was toxic. It wasn't even the proteins or the amino acids that are good for us. It just wouldn't have worked. Touch the oldest rock on Earth. They're all that. And here's where we have the WASP, worldview, assumption, starting point. This is an assumption. How much of the mother element and daughter element were there to start with when this rock was formed? When you do the testing with the different kinds of radio testing, you don't really know what was there when the rock was formed. For instance, Mount St. Helens erupted 1980. 10 years later, they took a sample of the rock that came out of it, had it tested in different ways, and it came back in the millions of years. And yet, when a rock is made from a volcano, when you see it happen, that's considered year zero. It would be 1 year old a year later. It would be 10 years old 10 years later. And that's all it was, but it came back in the millions. Caves are fun. Don't touch the stalactites because it takes millions of years for them to form. This is in the Rock of Gibraltar. Inside Gibraltar, there is this natural cave. There's lots of caves in there. They bored some of them out even during the wars in the 1700s to protect that area. But this is a natural cave. It was set up for concerts now. So there's seating in there, there's lighting, and they will have concerts. And as I was walking by, I saw an electrical cable on the ground that had stalagmites forming over it. it's a really old electrical cable. I go, oh, I wish I'd taken a picture of it. I didn't. Have to go back again. This is Mother Shipton's cave. You see the cool little building up here. This is in Knaresborough, North Yorkshire, England. We lived near there. I drove by this many times. I never got to go in. I stopped with some guests from the States, and it was closed the day that we stopped. But there's mineral pool in there, and that area near Harrogate, England, was very popular, especially during the Victorian era. You would go to take the waters. There's a lot of minerals in the waters. Well, people would bring things and immerse them in the water, then come back later and get them, and they will have petrified. Here's a hat. It's got some moss growing on it, but this is a petrified hat. That's a teapot. At first, when I looked at that, that's a rat. No, it's a teapot. This is like a lobster. I can't quite make out what that one is, but they are totally encrusted and have petrified. And these people aren't doing it and then having their descendants hundreds of years later go back and pick it up. No, they leave it for I don't know how long, a year or two maybe, and they go back and get it, and the thing has become petrified. Heart Mountain outside of Cody, Wyoming. Saw this thing all the time when I lived up there. The older layers are up here and the younger layers are down here. Does that sound like what you usually hear? So I was, for our church up there, I did a VBS program on creation, and I contacted Answers in Genesis, said, can you put me in touch with somebody that can tell me about the geology around Cody, because it's amazing, the stuff that's up there. They got me in touch with Michael Ord out of Montana, and he said about Heart Mountain, he said, this is basically a rock that tumbled from an area about 35 miles northwest of where it currently sits. And when it stopped tumbling, it was upside down. But its layers match the layers that are 35 miles to the northwest of its current location. Now, this kind of thing happens, he says, off of Hawaii. Rocks will, large ones, not that big maybe, will come off and they will slide or tumble, but they have water that gives them lubrication that allows them to move. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? This Heart Mountain tumbled underwater during the flood. Now, in the Buffalo Bill Museum there in Cody, they have a natural history museum. There's 5 museums under one roof in Cody. It's very well known for that. And they have a display about Heart Mountain, and they invite us to give our ideas about how that might have happened, that mountain was upside down. And you can write it out and put it in something. And after I found that out, I never did go in there and do it, but I should have. Wondered what they would say. So, oh, no, that can't be. This is a nice diorama that we see as we go through. It's supposed to look like it did millions of years ago. And it's the coastline of Kansas. Now they use a lot of speculation on what it looks like. I think, they've got ideas from fossils of what the plants and the animals might have been like. I find the rocks interesting. It just seems like that's really been kind of broken up by forces that might not have been around at the time the way they're thinking about it. I don't know. It's just, but here again, it's their starting point. This is what I think it's going to be like. Extinction episode. There's so much here. My goodness. And I feel a lot of the times very inadequate with this because I've got a lot of interest in the whole realm, but I'm not really good at any one particular thing. So I know a lot of you could probably say, ooh, tell them this. That would help. So if you've got any suggestions, Please. This is a good place to point out how our worldview interprets how we interpret the facts. Let me blow that up a little bit. What caused the extinction? So an extinction episode is where there's an apparent everything kind of died out. Since I can't get to my note, I don't remember for sure what it was. But what caused the extinction? There was the greatest extinction of all time. I think all we have to do is look in Genesis, don't we? We know what the greatest extinction of all time was, the flood. The continents had come together to form a supercontinent called Pangea, and it appears that's probably accurate. When God made the earth, he probably put the land in one area. Volcanic eruptions produced tremendous lava flows in what is now Siberia and other places as well. Fountains of the deep were probably water and probably volcanoes too. In fact, living up there next to Yellowstone National Park, have y'all heard about the Yellowstone Volcano? When you go down into the area where most of the geysers are, you're in the caldera of the super volcano. And living on just the outside of that, you're thinking, yeah, that thing goes, I'm gone. But I'm going to heaven, so that's a good thing. They say if that were to blow again, it would probably easily take out maybe, I don't know, the western third of the United States would be gone. That thing's huge. The climate became much cooler. The level of the oceans fluctuated dramatically. Well, that makes sense. And salt levels in the oceans changed. And that's true. That has happened. They are promoting the authority of science. It was interesting, Sunday school, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about different religions, false religions, and some people seem to even worship science. And I said, you know, science isn't always right. And one little boy, what? They've been told, trust the science, trust the science. I said, science is the process of learning about things. It's not the answers, it's the process. And that was kind of an eye-opener to him. We have to look at things with biblical glasses. Oh, this is just a quick skip through here. Eggshells and seeds evolved. All right. That's the evidence of God's design. God knows what he's doing. He worked it all out. He can make it happen. And he can make it happen well, and he makes it happen right from the outset. He doesn't have to evolve. If these had to evolve, how could these creatures have possibly continued? If eggshells had to get harder, well, what did the little baby, whatever it was, do if its eggshell was too soft and it couldn't survive? No, God had it right from the very start. And they have an overlook. There's a balcony. You're up on the second level in that particular gallery right now. And you can look over and see these different dinosaurs and things. They want to keep the kids going. In fact, they've got signs in there. The dinosaurs are just around the corner. And parents are trying to say, oh, but look at this dragonfly. Oh, no, look at this. And the parents are just trying to teach these kids, and the kids are going, I just want to see a dinosaur. When we get down, we go down the steps and we go around and we come in here and we're looking at this fella. And who cannot possibly remember Job and the behemoth? The chief of the ways of God, the creature that's so huge that it has to basically stick around in the marshes or something. He's so big. Against the wall over here, you can stand next to that, and you can't see it in the picture, but there's actually measurements. You can stand next to it, measure yourself, and see how big you are compared to that guy. It's kind of fun. This is kind of a neat place. When I get my folks in there, Genesis Apologetics I got a box in the mail one day. I said, well, I didn't order anything from them. And I opened it up, and there was this little plastic box, this little pop top on it, and it says, unfossilized dinosaur bone. And opened it up, and sure enough, there's a bone inside, just a little piece, and a whole stack of brochures that tell where it's from. It's from someplace in, I think it's in Montana. I should have brought one with me and I didn't do it. But the bone is not rock, it is bone. And there's powder in there as it's slowly, you know, bits of it are coming apart. And I showed it to him. I said, this is not fossilized, this is bone. So if it's dinosaur bone and it's not fossilized, how could it have lasted millions of years? It's just really pretty cool. Then I have them get this picture on their phones. That is the stretchy, unfossilized dinosaur tissue that we find out that there's more and more of it being discovered all the time in bones of dinosaurs. They're supposed to be millions of years old, and yet it's pliable and stretchy. And evolutionists are scrambling to come up with reasons that, oh, well, if it had enough iron in it, it could still be this, you know, stretchy after all these millions of years. Just, I guess, add enough time and iron and you can do that. This is the KT boundary, the meteor. Supposedly it landed off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. I didn't see any holes when I was there. Yucatan Peninsula is a limestone plateau. I guess that something could have landed, but not as big as they said. There's a video here that rolls with that. Yeah, sure enough. Let me see if I can get, oh, there's my cursor. He was over there. Okay, cool. The lost is found. Here, let's see if I can get this guy going. There. So it's explaining the thing landing. And funny enough, mostly it's the dinosaurs that died. What about other things? And I did some research on this, found out that with creation sites, of course, they said that you would really not have had that much of a wave from it as far as they say it would have gone like this. But what's happening there is it's showing an extinction event that fits right with the Bible. We don't need to come up with anything else. It's more than likely this wasn't an impact crater, but it was a volcanic crater. It's underwater. So there, you know, all the poor dinosaurs dying from that. But is that the one? And everywhere you go, it's like the meteor, the meteor. And parents stick their kids in front of that. It's sad. Was anybody there to witness it? No. Let's see. Oh, the iridium. It brings up iridium. And I thought that was rather interesting. Iridium, which is found at this level of the geologic column. And the assumption is if there were millions of years, then all iridium on Earth would have sunk to the core of the planet. So this had to have come from outer space. Therefore, it's the meteor or comet or whatever. Because after billions of years, the iridium in the crust is sunk to the core. So there is no natural iridium on the surface, as I understand from what they're saying. Had to come from outer space. However, there is too much iridium to fit the theory. Areas around comet impacts are not iridium enriched, and the flood has a better answer. Volcanoes. Volcanoes produce iridium. So if you have iridium around now, it's because volcanoes can put it there. So if there was no meteor, what was the crater? Possibly a volcano. And then there's Yellowstone too, as I told you. probably the fountains of the deep that the Bible tells us about. Okay, and there's more in the KT boundary, which has shocked quartz. Oh, shocked quartz. They immediately suspect a meteor strike with shocked quartz. They're quartz grains like the ones shown in the micro photograph are common at the KT boundary. Shocked quartz is caused by asteroid impacts. Now, KT boundary is Cretaceous Tertiary. Cretaceous starts with a C, not a K, but it says, so to get it, so it's different from one of the others that says, it starts with the C, they use a K. So that's a little confusing, but it works. No, don't do it. So anyway, shock quartz caused by asteroid impacts. It turns out lightning strikes also can make shocked quartz. There's enough pressure from that to make shocked quartz. During a great storm, you would have a lot of lightning. Also fits the theory of the flood, the truth of the flood. We were talking to a museum docent in one of our recon trips. She had some interesting things. One was a shell, and it shows the spiral in there. I go, ooh, Fibonacci. That was kind of cool. And so we were chatting with her, and kind of, you know, you sort of test people out to kind of see what they're thinking. And I said, man, some of it's just speculation, isn't it? She said, yeah, wait till you get to the horse exhibit. I don't buy it. So even one of the docents admitted, nah, no. And the horse exhibit, here we go. Just all the different critters. I don't know. We'll skip on through there. Oh, this is a riot. Okay, so this video. Oops, there we go. Little screen up there. Okay, so we were a sea creature. Then we came up on land. Then we decided to go back to the sea again. So I panned down to the whales. Okay, did you know that whales are once land creatures? Okay, so now we're going to go back up to the video. Okay, not all museums even agreed that that was the critter, that was that transition creature. They've got something else. So when I saw that, I thought, rodents of unusual size in The Princess Bride. That's not the idea. Hey, one myth is just as good as another, right? Ape or human or in between. If you've heard Dr. Menton or you've seen his video on how to make 3 ways to make an ape man, that was great. So I got this information from him. We on the same trip that the docent said, oh, you know, the horse exhibit, I just don't buy it. There was a docent sitting outside this particular area. He had a cart and it had different skulls on it. He had some ape skulls, he had the human skull, and he had these other, you know, partial human, the Sadoba, the Lucy, all these different things. And so I was pointing out to my young friend there how you could tell the difference, because I watched Dr. Menton's video. Well, this goes into the beginnings of human life. And this particular character right here, that's Lucy. You know Lucy, right? She stands about yay tall. They got her skeleton there. What they don't really bother to tell you is that part of the skeleton is light colored, part of it is gray. The gray parts are the parts that they actually have. There's not many of them. The rest of it is all what you see, that color there. And you see the different skulls there. In fact, this is when I have they don't show this at the museum. This is what I have my people to, okay, go to this slide, take a look at this. These are actually the bones that they found that have made that particular creature. That's all. Do you see any hand bones? Do you see any foot bones? I don't. And yet, look at those hands. She can play the piano. Those feet, they're very human feet. Where did they get that idea? That the bones weren't there? As I understand it, they found some footprints about 10 miles away. Figured she or her relatives made them and said, oh, there we go. We can put them right on there. Oh, and note the eyes. Apes do not show the white part of the eye. How in the world would they know what color her eyes were? Because eyes don't fossilize. And if they did, they wouldn't have any color to them. So they had to speculate on that. Just tell the artist, I'll pay you so much money, you make it the way I want you to make it. Oh, it was funny. We're standing there and school groups are going through, and there are about 3 or 4 boys. I used to teach 4th grade, and I tell you, these guys look classic 4th graders. They get in front of this thing, and one kid says, it's a gorilla. I thought, oh, out of the mouths of babes. He knew it, he got it right. Then I have this slide for them to look at. This is, the previous slide was the one I took the picture of the Lucy model at the museum. They had this one, but they unfortunately weren't smart enough scientifically to know that if you put wax under hot lights, it will melt. So they melted it. They had to get a new one. So this is the one that you see most often. This is the one Dr. Menton used. Just see the way she's posing for a picture and thinking. This one, Answers in Genesis, has taken the same bones, and they used the assumption, though, that this was an ape. And this is what they would come up with. Same creature, but what is it? Well, we like to think over here that this is an ancestor of humans. Over here, we're thinking it was an ape, just like the boy says, it's a gorilla. When you compare the skulls, there's several different points. On an ape, the face is sloped. On a human, it's pretty much vertical. On an ape, you can see into the eye orbit from the side. On a human, or you can't, it's not as, you can see a little bit, but not much. On a human, you can. You see far more into the eye orbit. The area where the spinal cord goes into the foramen magnum, the hole there where it goes into the skull, on an ape, it's at an angle because they're going to walk around on their knuckles and their head's got to be up like this. We're going to stand upright, so we, as humans, have ours go in at a different angle. When I was looking, I went over to the Lucy skull and I looked in there where they had the spine going in, and it didn't line up quite right. And then the size where the brain goes. Here's what the ape has. This is the same size circle I just copied and slid it over here. The human brain is much bigger. So when you go to the museum and you look at these, you can easily tell what's human, what's ape. Three ways to make an ape man. Dr. Menton says you combine ape and human fossils, declaring them to be one individual, or you upgrade fossil apes to ape man, or you downgrade fossil humans to ape men. 3 ways to do it. There are no intermediates. On your way out, you pass by the lab where you can look in and watch them It's very interesting. You can watch him working on fossils. When I was in Bible college, I went to Denver Baptist Bible College, and that's a long time ago. The school is now merged with Faith Baptist Bible College in Ankeny, Iowa. I'm an alumnus of that school, but I have never been there. It's just all on paper. One of my teachers was in science. He's worked with NASA. He's with the Lord now, but he had worked with NASA during this the moon shot, the very first one. He worked with Werner von Braun. Very interesting man, and he was a creationist speaker. And he said, and I don't know how he knew this, and I know his daughter. I've talked to her, and I mentioned this last time I saw her. She says, "Yeah, it's there, it's there." She doesn't know her either. But in museums there are many artifacts and things that they just can't put out on display. What you get to see is minimal compared to what is actually in the vaults underneath the building. But in those vaults, there is a dinosaur bone, Mr. Sweeney said, a dinosaur bone that has an arrowhead embedded in it. That'll never see the light of day. Ever. And that's all I know. That's all he ever said about it. But I trust the guy. He knew what he was talking about. They say very little about the Ice Age. The Bible says very little about the Ice Age too. They say there were a bunch of them and they lasted a long time. The Bible doesn't speak about it much, but it does give us a few clues. One of the clues is Job talks about snow. And in that part of the world, there's not a lot of snow. But he was, as I understand, a contemporary of Abraham. And during that time, apparently, there was a different climate. There was more snow. It was at that level, that longitude, if you had more of the snow and ice to the north, you would have had more of a temperate climate there. And he would have seen that. Also, he speaks of the behemoth being in the marshes and lying in the water. There's not that much water around there. So there are some different things at the time of Job than what we know of today. Yes, there is climate change. And it's because the earth is still settling itself after the flood. It's been, 4,500 years or so, according to the genealogies and everything we can figure. The earth is still going to be adjusting itself after something like that. That was cataclysmic. So yeah, there's climate change. Did man cause it? Kind of, because it was a judgment on sin. So yeah, we are responsible. But we didn't make it happen. It was a judgment of God. Also, with all the volcanic activity, it would have warmed up the water. So I point out to folks, you always hear about land bridges. Well, if you had warm water, follow me on this, if you had warm water, it's going to evaporate more. You get that moisture up in the air, it's going to get up toward the cooler portions, it's going to snow, it's going to dump all the snow and ice on the land, and it will lower the sea. They figure it would have lowered about 300 feet. That would have exposed a lot of land bridges where animals could migrate from where the ark landed. People would have migrated after the Tower of Babel. It makes perfect sense. It all fits. And then as things cool off, the sea level rises again. Yes, we don't have as much ice as there was then. Of course we don't. But it's still just the world, the earth readjusting itself after that big cataclysm. It's very easy to showcase the gospel when you're there. The Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, "You may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die." And he did. Adam and Eve ate the fruit. Sin was introduced. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Jesus Christ our Lord. If anything, this museum is a museum of death. Everything's dead in there. Even the animals that look like they're alive up in the wilderness exhibits and all, they're all dead. Everything dies. And it's easy to point that out there. And then to go on and say, God sent his son to rescue us from this death. And death is only temporary. God's going to take care of it. He's going to remake everything new again. Who knows? Maybe in the new heavens and new earth, we'll get to have dinosaurs back. That's a thought. International Association for Creation is a driving force behind the museum guides in history museums, zoos, and aquariums. Also, they work with homeschool movements around the world. In fact, where was it? They were going to be Mongolia. Tomorrow, they're going to be talking to homeschool families in Mongolia. You'd be surprised at where homeschooling is coming up through them. They were in Bolivia the other day, just encouraging people. There was something about pray for us. We're trying to work at getting homeschool curriculum into the largest nation in Asia. It didn't say what the nation was, but it's pretty easy to tell. So pray for International Association for Creation, working with homeschoolers. And under that is the Alliance of Independent Museum Guides. And you too can become a museum guide if you want. They do have training, really good ways of helping you get through all of your creation stuff. Genesis Apologetics has some excellent videos. Even to get on there, you can get an app and you can look at their videos. It's wonderful. Here's the Film Museum in Chicago. There is the group, a good group. My groups have been really small so far. I've only done 3. This young man right here is Stephen Polycastro. He's the brains behind all of this. He is a go-getter, and he does tours several different places. He did video tours, virtual ones during the lockdown, and homeschool families from all over the world would get on, and he could take them through different exhibits. Here he is looking at one of the critters there at the Field Museum. This shows the locations of places where there are guides. If it's, let's see, I think if it's the green ones, it's a museum. If it's the orange, it's a zoo. And of course, the blue ones are aquariums. And there's also someone doing tours at the British Museum in London. And I think probably some other European ones as well, but I'm just not really sure where. And that is the end of my slideshow. Thank you. You want some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we will now have questions and answers, and see, do we have baskets to pass around here? Okay. Yeah. So they'll pass some baskets around for, you can put whatever you want to in there. It goes to Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship. So if you have a question, raise your hand and she will
Try to answer.
call on you, and I will run a mic around to you. So don't answer your question and ask your question until you get a microphone, okay?
I apologize. I don't know what time it is. I was going to do my phone, but I had to keep clicking it on. So I have no idea if I went over.
You're doing
Probably. Okay. Oh, all righty. Yes.
I've got several questions,
Oh,
Kate.
no.
It was good to see you. We saw you a
Yes,
couple months back, I
yes.
think it was.
Yeah.
How long typically is your tour time when you give a tour at the museum?
Generally, what I do is we start at 10 o'clock in the morning. And if people are going through the prehistoric exhibit, which is the big one, and that one isn't really for kids. That one takes about, what, an hour and a half, roughly? Yeah. If we do the other part, with all the animals and the different areas like that, it would be about the same, about an hour and a half. There's a really great cafeteria there. We go get lunch, and if they want to go back to the prehistoric exhibit, we do fit all of it in those. So probably an hour after lunch, I'd say from 10, lunch break at some point, till about maybe 2 in the afternoon.
Then how much does this cost?
It costs to get into the museum. And then for my tour guide fee, it's I'm doing $10 a person, and then on family groups, something, do a deal. And I'm still working on that. You know how hard it is to come up with pricing on something? And we said, this is a ministry, I shouldn't
I
be
understand,
paid.
yeah.
So, yeah, so $10 a person, and if anybody
The
says,
museum cost is $10.
at least,
Yeah, okay.
at least,
All right.
yeah.
And which days are best for you, or will you recommend?
I can do pretty much any day. Thursdays are not good simply because I have music practice that day. But if somebody needed the Thursday, I'd say, okay, I can shift our practice around.
You were struggling with a laser there earlier, and I was wondering if it's allowable for you to use a laser during your presentations to point out the
I
fall
never
into the
even,
dinosaur or
I never
something.
even thought of that. I don't know.
Okay, good question. And do you have a handout as you proceed that they can use to go along with it, or?
I will have, yes, actually, I do, for when we go through the wildlife exhibits. I have sections of it, look for the bear kind, the cattle kind, and then they can check when they find them, sort of a scavenger hunt. That's really good for kids. Kids love doing that kind of thing. But during the prehistoric journey, when I have the slides,
Right.
That's what I do with that. Then everybody, because people have phones. I would have given them to you, but I didn't figure it was going to be very easy for me to text you all the link. So that's why I put some of them up on the screen there. So that's what I do for that one. And it's much better than having paper in your hand for that. And then it's, you know, good color slides, and then they've still got the link they can look at when they get home.
I like your concept where you have something you can speak to and they hear it in your ear.
That's been such a blessing. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a really good concept.
Yeah, and that wasn't my idea. That was a blessing from Genesis Apologetics. They loaned it to me. It doesn't belong to
And where
me.
you also say, because I'm hard of hearing, first of all, so I missed some of the things you said. Did you say you could pick up your cell phone, a person's cell phone, and see what you were trying to present or something?
Yes, there's a,
In other words, I could bring my cell phone and you'd be projecting to it or something.
what you would do would be, we stand outside the exhibit and I say, okay, here's the link. I've just texted it to you because you would give me your phone number. I would text you the link. You'd click on it and it would open up the PowerPoint presentation right on your phone.
Oh, wow.
And every slide is numbered. And as we go through, I'd say, okay, now go to the slide number 4. And whatever is slide number 4, that one is applicable to what we're looking at in the museum. So you've got the museum exhibit here, and in your hand, you've got, oh, okay, something that would help us to understand the biblical side of it and make sense of it.
That's even better than a piece of paper.
Yeah, it really is. It's easier to hold.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I have the power. Okay, I have like a couple of questions.
Okay.
So I will try to make it fast. The first one's like really specific. I was just curious about it, so it's okay if you don't know the answer. But you were talking about there was like the rock in Cody, I think it was.
Oh, Heart Mountain and Cody.
That one, yeah. It's like upside down. Like kind of a 2-part question.
Okay.
How do they know it's upside down?
They look at the layers and they, you know, how everybody, they've got which particular layers are what.
Okay, but didn't you say they like look the same as the ones around them?
It looks the same as the ones, no, not directly around,
Got it.
not directly, but 35 miles to the northwest. those same layers are in the same formation, only the rock is inverted because it apparently broke out during the flood, during all that stuff, and it rolled and tumbled where it is sitting right now.
And then the second half of that question would be, what's the evolutionist's explanation of that?
I don't know.
Cool.
Which is
research it. I'll have to research it.
Yeah, at the museum there in Cody, they have, like I said, there was this display about Heart Mountain. It says it's upside down. And they don't give you answers. They invite you to give yours. So I don't remember them giving any answers. So yeah.
Okay, and then my next question would be like, in general, what's your style during your museum tours? Like, how do you go about combating the things they say? Do you just like present the creation side? Do you do like point by point
That's a really good question. The thing that's cool about this is it's like walking into a secular textbook. Only it's 3D, you're right there. And it's, okay, in the prehistoric exhibit, you really do kind of refute what they have. When you go to the wildlife exhibits and the others, yeah, those come up, but that really focus on, look what God has made. Look at the dioramas in there are spectacular. They're beautiful, and you really see different parts of the world. They've got the animals there. So what God has done, and then looking at how you do have the animal kinds and how they work together, and you do see predation. There's some animals eating others in that, and it's really good to be able to show this is, a museum of death. Everything's dying. This shows us the consequences of sin. So that part in particular, but yeah, going through the prehistoric journey part with all the dinosaurs and all that, the science in there, to look at that and say, okay, now here's the biblical view. And I was just thinking of something when I said that, now it's gone. Getting old is for the birds. Maybe I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay, well, while you're thinking, I have one last question.
All right.
So you mentioned a couple times in your talk that you like had talked to the docents at the museum and like kind of, seen, like felt out what they believe.
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering if maybe you could like shortly summarize kind of like what the general consensus is, like what do they think?
The one gentleman that I was talking to was very interested in what I was doing, especially when I told him it was going to be creation tours. Oh, well, now we were standing in front of the Miller-Urey exhibit where they're trying to get the proteins and the amino acids and all that. And he said, that is the actual equipment that they use. And he was really interested in that. And so I was telling him that, well, what they got wasn't. And so he said, oh, well, yeah. He didn't quite agree with me, of course. And the interesting thing was that he said, I'm Jewish. And I thought, well, then, Yahweh created everything, right? It was a good talk. It was interesting with him. You have to realize every person there is somebody Jesus died for, and he wants them to know the truth, and you can't cram it down their throat, even though they try to cram it down ours when they're in there with placard after placard, sign after sign. I ran into him later on. There was another exhibit on Stonehenge I was thinking about going into, and I drifted that direction. He was there, and there was a lady that was there too, another docent, and I chatted with them for a while there. He was the one that showed up then when I had a group up front and was waiting off to the side. I think waiting to see, what are we going to do? Is this woman going to get on a soapbox and get loud? And that's why I'm so grateful for the whisper sets, because they don't have to, but they have to give the message to the museum. I have a friend who is a park ranger at Bryce Canyon in Utah. He is search and rescue. He's not one of the ones that does the interpretive stuff. He said, as a search and rescue, I can tell the creation account here at the park. If I was one of the interpretive rangers, I'd have to say what the park wants us to say, which is millions of years. So it goes that way too, about everywhere you go. If you're working for them, even if you're volunteer, you got to use theirs. And they do. Did that answer your question?
Mostly.
Okay, mostly. Except for what I didn't know, which is a lot.
I mean, I knew less than you, so.
Well, that helps.
So I don't have a question, I just have a statement that I thought you would greatly appreciate. I was watching a video the other day about new advances in science and such like that. And so it was talking about carbon-14 dating becoming completely obsolete, and it was talking about how secular scientists have figured this out, but creation scientists have apparently known this all along. They just haven't chosen to share it with anyone. So I thought you'd appreciate that.
Yeah, really. Actually, they've tried to share it. Nobody's listening. Thank you for that. That's cool. Oh, got somebody here. Sorry.
Hi,
Hi.
I just was wondering, what is your contact information so that if we want to go on a tour, how do we?
See me after. I think I've got some business cards with me.
And then the gentleman you mentioned at the Field Museum, what was his name?
Stephen Polycastro.
Paula,
He's Italian.
like one word?
Yeah,
Okay.
one word. Polycastro. Policastro.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my last, have you had any issues where people like try to debate with you while you're giving a tour?
No, I've only gone 3 times so far. And I was told that museum can be a little tough on some other creation groups that have been there and done some things. They were being a little mean, but no, I've had people hang around the edges listening, but I've never had so far anybody say anything.
And then, not to promote any other company or whatever, but when you show the map, you know, like there's obviously a lot of areas that are not covered, especially like in the north, or, you know,
Yeah.
like my interest would be like to get to go to South Dakota and, you know, go
Oh,
to the
yeah.
Mammoth Dig or something and have someone from a creation side explain that. Are there other companies such as yours that do things that, because I always struggle with finding any guides.
Don't really know.
Okay.
I know that there was somebody who used to do it at Denver Museum that's not connected with IAC. And I think he was with Bill Jack's ministry for a while. I don't remember his name. I met him at the Czech convention. But I'm sure that there might be other people out there, but this is a new venture for IAC, getting this out. And to have this many people stand up and do it so far is very encouraging. So contact them maybe and say, hey, can you get somebody in South Dakota? Because I really want to know what that is. Yeah. Question, I saw a hand back there a little bit ago. Anybody else? Okay.
Well, I actually had a statement.
Okay.
Too. So we were at the Nature and Science Museum with a tour guide, and the tour guide said that he was on a different tour, but this time it was with the evolutionist tour guide, and he went into the fish part, and he pointed to signs saying that their teeth evolved from scales. And every single kid blurted out laughing so hard, and the creationists felt bad.
Huh. Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't make sense, does it? It's like the kid in front of the Lucy thing, it's a gorilla. You kind of have to work hard to throw some of the lies down kids' throats. They get it. Anybody else?
Well, I guess that would about wrap things up then. So we will, after we dismiss, if you have any further questions or discussion topics you would like to carry on with Kate afterwards, please feel free to do that. We will try to be getting the building all shut down and closed up starting around 9:15. And we need to be out of the building by 9:30. So kind of keep that in mind. And does anybody know what time it is?
I just found the clock.
It's almost 9. It's 8:10 or 8:50. I'm sorry.
Okay. My watch is at the shop right now. So anyway, we got about 25 minutes here to hang out and talk and whatever you want to do. And then we will close up. And so let's have one final round of applause for Kate.
Thanks for being great. I appreciate it.